Hey everyone, welcome back to this explainer brought to you by Forge College. I'm absolutely thrilled to be your guide today. If you've been following along in our Solidity from Zero track, you know we just wrapped up an awesome session on the address type and common operations, where we figured out how to handle addresses and simple access controls. Well, today we are officially entering the architectural drafting phase of our journey. We're going to look at how we take those solitary primitive types we've been studying and actually piece them together. It's kind of like taking individual bricks and finally learning how to build a structurally sound, highly efficient wall. So let's get our hard hats on and dive right in.
Here is our engineering schematic for today's build. First up, the blueprint mental model. Second, drafting a membership record. Third, weighing the trade-offs. And finally, signing off the blueprint. Let's get to it.
All right, Section 1, the blueprint mental model. Let's take a look at primitives as our core building blocks.
So as a smart contract developer, you really have to think about every single primitive type, a Boolean, an unsigned integer, an address, as having two distinct properties. First, its semantic role, like what does it actually represent in your application? And second, its physical footprint. How much literal space does it take up in storage? Think of it exactly like placing furniture on a floor plan. A massive king-size bed serves a completely different purpose and takes up way different space than a tiny little bedside table. You can't just throw them in a room randomly if you want the space to be functional, right? Well, the core space we are working with here is the 32-byte storage slot. The Ethereum virtual machine stores data in these 256-bit rooms. Now, if you declare a massive uint 256, it happily stretches out and takes up the entire room. But what happens if you declare a tiny Boolean, which literally only needs 1 byte? Well, if you aren't careful about how you pack your data, that tiny Boolean will take up the entire 32-byte slot all by itself. It's kind of like a solitary billionaire living alone in a 50-room mansion. It is wildly inefficient, and in Ethereum storage, inefficiency translates directly into higher gas fees for your users.
So, the crucial point is that we need a concrete strategy to avoid wasting all that space. Here is your 3-step mental checklist for picking the right data type. Step 1. Identify the domain. What is the concept? If it's ownership, you use an address. Simple toggle, use a bool. Step 2. Estimate the range or width. For instance, if you're building a counter that will absolutely never go above 200, a uint 8 translates perfectly, because its maximum value is 255. But if it's a token balance, you probably need a uint 256. And finally, step 3. Check packing opportunities. If you have several small variables like a bool and a uint 8, stick them right next to each other in your code. The Solidity compiler is actually smart enough to pack them into the exact same 32-byte room, saving you precious gas.
Moving right along to Section 2, drafting a membership record, where we put this model into practice.
We're going to transition into a hands-on example now. It's one thing to talk about floor plans theoretically, but it's way better to actually draft one. We are going to build a super common real-world scenario, an on-chain membership record. We need to store an ID, an active status, an Ethereum address, a reputation score, and a timestamp. So let's walk through the reasoning behind the types we'd pick. For the ID, we chose a uint32. That gives us over 4 billion members, which is plenty for our use case, while staying small enough to be packed. Active is a bool, which is a perfect semantic fit for a true-false toggle. For member address, we obviously use the address type, capturing the user's account in 20 bytes. Now for reputation, let's say it scores from 0 to 100. We'll use a uint 8, because it maxes out at 255, giving us a nice tight fit. And finally, last active at gets a uint 256. Timestamps technically fit fine in 64 bits, but standard libraries in Solidity widely use uint 256 for time, so using it here just avoids annoying conversions later on.
Now this perfectly illustrates why the order you write your code in matters so much. If you declare these variables in a scattershot order, let's say you write a uint 256, then a bool, then an address, then a uint 8, the compiler simply can't pack them. It's going to throw them each into separate 32-byte storage slots. But think about what happens with a tightly packed gas-optimized order. If we intentionally group the smaller types together, the uint32 ID, the uint 8 reputation, and the bool active status, we can place them right before the 20-byte address, because 4 bytes plus 1 byte plus 1 byte plus 20 bytes equals 26 bytes. They all fit comfortably together inside a single 32-byte storage slot. Just by reordering your lines of code, you literally saved your users a ton of gas. Pretty cool, right?
But wait, as we build this out, there is a massive trap we need to talk about. Beware of defaults. In Solidity, there's absolutely no such thing as null or undefined. If you declare a variable but don't explicitly initialize it, it just automatically gets a default value based on its type. A uint defaults to 0, A bool defaults to false, and an address defaults to the 0 address. Now, why does this matter? Well, think about it. If you use ID number 0 as a valid ID in your system, you have literally no way to tell the difference between a brand new unassigned member and actual member number 0. You must explicitly check and initialize your variables so these silent defaults don't accidentally completely break your application's logic.
All right, Section 3, weighing the trade-offs. The classic battle of gas optimization versus type safety.
This is the constant battle that every single Web3 developer faces. In one corner, we have gas optimization, trying to make the code as absolutely cheap as possible to execute. In the other corner, we have type safety, writing code that is robust, predictable, and totally free of catastrophic bugs. It's a delicate balancing act, right? Every time you pick a data type, you're making a conscious choice on this spectrum. Which leads us to a really common question, especially when you're newer to this: is smaller always better for gas? Like, if I just use uint8 for literally everything, will my smart contract be super cheap? Well, the surprising answer is no. Narrowing your types is definitely not a silver bullet. You see, the EVM processor intrinsically operates on 256-bit words. When you use a smaller type like uint8 in an arithmetic operation, the EVM actually has to do extra work to mask and promote that value up to 256 bits, do the math, and then cast it back down.
Let's walk through the specs here to really break it down. uint256 is basically your default for numbers and balances. The huge pro is that it's highly compatible with standard EVM math and safe from most overflows. The con is, yeah, it uses a full slot. Now, uint8 or uint16 are great for small counters, and their main pro is that packed storage. But the con, they require explicit casting and carry a massive risk of truncation if your math somehow exceeds their maximum values. Address gives you amazing semantic clarity and built-in helpers, but its awkward 20-byte size can make packing tricky sometimes. And a bool is perfectly clear for toggles, but again, you really have to order it carefully to actually get those packing benefits.
Because of all those complex trade-offs, I really want to leave you with this. Consider this a golden rule of Web3 development. Default to uint256 unless you have a documented, measured reason to choose a narrower width. Seriously, if you try to optimize prematurely by making everything a uint8, you are going to introduce painful bugs, truncation errors, and tons of compatibility issues with other smart contracts. Just default to the standard 256 bits for safety and only optimize specific data structures where you have a really clear plan for storage packing.
And look, when you do decide to use those narrower types, you've got to use defensive declarations. Write code that actively protects itself. If you're casting down to a uint8, throw in a require statement to explicitly check that the number hasn't exceeded 255. Use intentional sentinel values. For example, just start your user IDs at 1, so that an ID of 0 clearly unambiguously means uninitialized. And most importantly, document your maximum ranges in the comments. A year from now, when another dev upgrades this contract, those simple comments will save them from completely breaking your carefully crafted storage packing.
And that brings us to Section 4, signing off the blueprint. Let's wrap this up.
So, we've laid down the floor plan, we've organized our furniture, and we've checked the structural integrity of our choices. Composing primitive types isn't just about syntax, it's a rigorous design exercise. You are matching the semantic meaning of the data with the harsh physical realities of 32-byte EVM storage slots. So, what's the ultimate takeaway here? You are now fully prepared for our next build, Introduction to Structs and Arrays. The skills we just practiced, identifying the domain, choosing the right wets, grouping fields to optimize storage, those are the exact mechanics you're going to need to define powerful, gas-efficient structs. You now know exactly how to look at a group of primitive variables and arrange them logically and economically. So, I leave you with this final question. Are your storage slots ready for the heavy machinery? Because in the next lesson, we're bringing in structs and arrays, and things are going to get incredibly exciting. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today. To keep exploring this topic, to practice building your own structs, and to really dive deeper into Web3 development, make sure to head over to forge.college. We've got so much more to teach you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next explainer.